Hello and welcome to the FSF PopCast. I am Tim. I am your host, and this is the show that is made by nerds for nerds. So welcome to the temporary nerdatorium because it's really hot here in Michigan, and I didn't feel like sitting outside in the studio where there's no air conditioning. I'm kind of a baby that way. Anyway, our guests today, between the two of them, have written, produced, and directed some of the biggest hits in Hollywood, whether on the TV screen or on the big screen when you go to the theater. Now, currently, they're running the hit show Murderbot over on Apple TV+. By the way, if you haven't watched that yet, I need you to kindly get out from under the rock that which you're hiding. Go watch the show. Go get an Apple TV Plus subscription. It's well worth your money. There's other shows on there that you're going to enjoy, but they have Murderbot, and it's amazing. Anyway, now you've heard some of their other work. I'm sure of it. Now, not just the American Pie series, which we're going to talk about a little bit tonight because I'm in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan. I just graduated high school when that movie came out. We got to talk about it. But anyway, Chris is known for his work on shows like Golden Compass, Rogue One. Star Wars boy here knew he was from Rogue One. About a Boy, and there's a bunch of other notable works as well. Paul is also known for his work as well on Golden Compass. One of my favorite movies, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. That's a pretty amazing show as well. There's Admission, Pinocchio, and a whole bunch of other notable films. I am extremely excited and very proud to welcome Paul and Chris Weitz to the FSF podcast. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, I'm honestly very excited to have you both here. I have wanted to actually talk with you guys for a long time, and I was like stoked that there was even a possibility to get you guys on the show.
We finally made something you liked, so now.
No, actually, that's not the problem. You guys have made plenty of things that I like. That's, just. I could go on a whole binge about why Rogue One is amazing and all these other issues. And I could go on a whole binge as to why I love Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist and why those two movies have a very large thumbprint on my life. But tonight, for the most part, we're going to talk about Murderbot over on Apple TV+.
Cool.
Now, one of the first things I do on every interview, guys, is that for the most part, I always ask about the person's origin story, how they got started and their work and everything else. We're going to change that up a little bit tonight, even though I like to know origins because I like to know why people do what they do and why, what drives them, what motivates them, what helps them to be the creative person that they are. But tonight we're going to do that a little bit different. I'd like to know what got your interest in Murderbot. What's the origin here for you guys with the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells?
It was just as readers. I think I read it first. I just was at my local bookstore and looking at the covers of books, and I thought it had a really cool cover. Kudos to I don't know if Tommy Arnold did that cover, but we actually used one of the cover artists for some of the visual development of the show.
Yeah, it was Tommy.
I read it, and it was the character has such a distinct voice, and I usually don't read to try to find something to adapt. I just read for pleasure because there's not many vices one can get away with as you get older. And that's my primary one. But I sent it to Chris, and Chris loved it as much as I did, and it really felt like the character of Murderbot was so strong and something that I hadn't seen before. And so we just came to it as fans, and then so Chris.
Yeah, and then when you find something that you want to adapt, it's a bit of a mixed blessing because that if you love something the way that you can sort of geek out on a sci-fi book, it means that you're going to have to go so deep into it that you're going to spend like the next couple of years of your life doing it, and you really risk like destroying your love of the thing that you had in the first place because there's so many hard things to do along the way. But in this case, actually, it's been a really lovely process because we got to know Martha Wells, the writer of the books, quite well, and she was like just a really great in terms of the since the person who had created that world. She was super generous with her time and with her kind of how much she was willing to allow us to delegate sort of responsibility for some of the ways that things were going to look to us. Because like with science fiction, I mean, most, I mean, even less than many science fiction worlds, this wasn't like drawn down to the last detail, right? So the way that it was going to look, the way that the characters were going to look, the kind trying to get the tone right was going to be in our hands a lot. And of course, we always checked with Martha, but it was quite a lot of responsibility, and she was really great about that.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I think one of the things that interests me most about Murderbot is the tone that the Murderbot has in his interactions, or with its interactions rather, with everyone around itself. It's you know, I love that there's the outside facade of I am Murderbot, I am, you know, all these things, but inside is just like, so when do I get to go to Sanctuary Moon? When do I get to watch more of the Sanctuary Moon show?
Yeah, where it has Sanctuary Moon open as it's talking to people and supposedly doing its job. I mean, it's kind of the ultimate fan Murderbot. It's that's the main, you know, it's hacked its governor module, so it could have a big adventure. It could kill everyone around it. It could, you know, try to launch a rebellion, but really, after thinking about these things, what it wants to do is watch its favorite show. And it'll watch a bunch of other shows too. Like it constantly wants to be watching media.
Yeah, I mean, there's something really human about that. But one of the great things about Martha's books is that this is about you know, this inverts the kind of the trope of the robot that wants to become human, or that wants to learn to experience human emotions. That it really has no desire for like any of that messy stuff. And like would really just rather be left alone. And so there's something at the same time like really counterintuitive and totally understandable about that.
I think honestly for me that was one of the things that really drew me in right away, because pre-show I was talking about how like 30 seconds in I knew I was going to love the series. And just the opening dialogue, the monologue rather that he has there in the beginning, you know, and talking about what it sees and how it sees everything. And that for me was very interesting, because it's talking about humans and emotions and all these things. And it's like, well, humans are stupid. And I was like, yeah, well, you got me on that one. You're right. Humans are stupid. But I identify with that, because I just love the fact that it was like, yeah, just leave me alone. Let me go watch my shows, and I don't have to kill anybody. Everybody's fine.
Yeah. It doesn't want to think about other people. It doesn't want to think about itself, because it's it's got a fair amount of self-loathing and self-deprecation. I mean, the reason that it gets hired to protect this particular group of humans is that they're cheap. They want the cheapest model. And that's Murderbot. And
what about like, that one?
When they see him for the first time, he says, "Oh wait, what's that piece of crap over there? Oh, that's me." So it's you know, it's constantly scathing towards everyone around it and towards itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I gotta say also, it really helps to have Alexander Skarsgård in that role, right? Because it's someone who you know, is kind of instantly sort of compelling, is really great at holding the camera, and is just generally interesting. And so you can push against that by having it say a lot of distasteful and, you know, kind of uncharitable things, but you still don't really hold it against Murderbot because of how good Alex is.
Oh yeah. I was fortunate enough to recently have Tamara Podimsky and Tatiana Jones on the show.
Oh, cool.
And we were talking about their characters, Arata and the name, whose name I can never.
Bardwash, yeah.
Thank you very much. I can never get that name. I've tried. I just call her Character B. Because I'm just like, I slaughter that name every time.
Yeah, she wouldn't mind.
Yeah. But Tamara was actually pretty cool with that. I'm like, yeah, I can't say that, Tamara. Sorry. But one of the things that one of the other things I liked about this show, not only, and kudos to your whole writing staff, you guys have done a masterful job, in my opinion, and adapting this and making it interesting and making it a compelling story and really developing, I think, pretty well each character to make them all have an interesting point for being on the screen. I didn't think that anybody in the main cast was where I looked at it and go, well, you really don't need that character. I don't know why they have this character in there. I didn't feel that way about any of them.
No,
And I just
thanks
feel
so
it's-
much. Well, we really
Yeah.
appreciate it. The book, actually, there's a couple more characters who are on that crew, and we kind of combine characters because, and Martha understood this because we talked to her about it, of course. Like the more characters you have in a, if you got a 9-character scene, it's pretty hard to give each of them a line and a perspective. So shrinking the crew down to a couple less characters made it possible to give them more stuff to do. And then we're very keen to, once we cast somebody, let them contribute to their character and have them inform the character as much as possible. So a lot of this is like, without those actors, the characters would have been different.
Yeah, and I think in the books, because you're just looking at it from Murderbot's point of view, it's a first-person narrative. You're not really very informed about the inner lives of these humans, because Murderbot sort of doesn't care. It's only really in the interaction that it has with Murderbot that the characters get illuminated. So Martha was kind of sketching out the characters in ways which allowed for us to develop backstories for them with the actors who are going to portray them. And our main thing was to try to avoid a lot of kind of science fiction tropes of like, too much heroism, too much worthiness, too much badassery, which is, nothing against it. It's just as done well on a lot of other shows. And we were more interested in kind of a comedy of manners in space.
No, I like the fact that you don't have those things. And I like the fact that Murderbot is the self-loathing hero, but he's not the hero by choice. He's the hero because he has to be, so that people don't find out that he's watching his shows.
Yeah, exactly. Because it'll get busted. It'll get melted down. If
right. He's like, I don't want to be a pile of goo.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting because we also tried to find clues in later books. Like the first season of the show is very much based on the first season of the book, the first book. But like in book like 5, I think it is, I'm not sure, but you find out that Mensa, who's the leader of the group, played by Noman Bezmini, who does some heroic things in the show, but also is subject to panic attacks, which is not in the first book. But we were like, oh, we don't just want her to be this sort of like worthy, like perfect person who's all sort of empathy and doing the right thing all the time. And in book 5, I believe it says that she had been in therapy because of the trauma of the violent things that happened in book 1. So we were like, okay, well, maybe that gives us license to give her panic attacks in book 1, because also she's the one who is kind of early on makes a decision they're going to stay. They're not like immediately going to pull the cord. So she feels all this responsibility. So
it's
the thing that often happens in sci-fi shows when violence occurs, is that like terrible things will happen. People sort of high five, and then next episode they've sort of moved on. Whereas like when this happens in real people's lives, someone's head is blown up next to yours, it tends to stick with you for a lifetime, actually. And so this is something really true of Martha Wells's universe, that people are really affected by the violence that they encounter, and also that they commit. I mean, Murderbot itself is kind of traumatized, although it's not very serious about it. It's kind of self-deprecating and joking about it. But it's definitely the case that, I mean, even the name that it makes up for itself is kind of a reflection on the worst way that it can see itself, which is just as a killing machine.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question? Did our dad talk about something that happened in World War II where he was in a Jeep next to somebody and their face got blown off?
Yes. That may play in.
Somebody gets their head blown off in this show.
Our dad was a World War II veteran, and we can remember his describing some very gnarly things that happened that probably played into our appreciation of violence in this show.
Fair enough. I think that would do it.
Sorry, Tim, that just went very, very dark very quickly.
That's okay. It's true to the story, so all good. All right, so let me ask you a question, and I don't typically ask the what's your favorite question, but outside of Murderbot, aka Sec Unit, is there a character that you found yourself identifying with that made it easier for you to write for them?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go right away to Garathan, because I had gotten to know David Dasmelchian working on a film before we cast him in Murderbot, and so I knew him. I kind of knew the way that he was. I was quite familiar with him, with his sort of vocal cadences and things like that. And I also knew that he was a recovering addict, which is something that he's been very open about. So I'm not kind of speaking out of school.
Right.
And so that that got incorporated into the backstory of that character in a way that kind of fit, given his position in the world. And actually, I don't. It's kind of like, you know, saying you have a favorite kid. So I don't want to say that, but that was just something that you know, that popped for me very much when we were working on this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a Lorraine Hansberry quote, which is just phrasing something that's been said numerous times before, but is that the specific is the universal. So the fact that we could bring a lot of David's personal experience to this in terms of addiction and other things made it a lot easier to write that character. And also the character's kind of like cynicism and inability to, in a way, to connect with other people was very identifiable as well.
Okay, very cool. All right, so let's talk about your guys' writing process, how you bring your work to life. Now, I asked this question of a lot of writers that I have on the show because again, as I said earlier, I like to know how people do what they do, why they do what they do. So with you guys, you know, and this may be different for both of you. In the process of your writing, do you like to develop the story first or the character first? And does that change with pre-existing worlds like the one here built for the Murderbot Diaries?
I think they're somewhat inextricable, because hopefully, I mean, obviously it's different if you're adapting than if you're doing an original, because you're working off pre-existing architecture if you're adapting. But I think that there's a way, you know, the plot happens because characters act in a certain way. And if they're, sometimes it's weird because you want a plot thing to happen, but you realize that the character wouldn't act that way. And then you're kind of stuck. You got to figure out a different way to do something, or you have to be like, or you have to accept the thing's not going to be as good as you want it to be. So I actually think that the real thing about adapting this is, while Martha was pretty sparse and sparing in her description of the characters for the most part, except for Murderbot, the characters all act in a way that makes sense. And they don't make sense in a 1 + 1 = 2 way. They make sense in the way that humans do, where it's like their idiosyncrasies and insecurities and the things that they want are leading to plot things happening. Like in the beginning, Bharadwaj is with Arata, and Murderbot says, "Get out of there. You're going to be attacked," basically. And Bharadwaj is like, "Oh, it doesn't know what it's talking about. And we're really getting to the good stuff now. Hold on a sec." And then this thing bursts from the ground and chomps on her.
Right.
So in a way, without her being like that, without her being so obsessed with scientific pursuit, it wouldn't have happened in theory.
Yeah, and then that there's a cynicism about anything that comes from the company and whether you should pay attention to it, right? So that's sort of character allowing that to happen. Whereas, like, you know, sometimes you're watching, let's say, Alien Prometheus, and you're like, why did that guy just take his helmet off to look at the seemingly dangerous viral alien creature? And it's hard to say why, other than that the plot requires it at that moment. Hopefully they both kind of happen at the same time, and you're not forcing a character into doing something just because the show demands it.
Okay. All right. So you guys are also known for not only working together on some movies here and there, but you're also known for your solo work, and you guys have done a lot in both television and movies over the years. But when you do work together, what is the division of responsibilities? I asked this of somebody else, and it was a married couple, and they were like, well, I do the work, she takes all the credit. Is that a similar situation, or do we go a little more 50-50?
I'd say it's kind of much more like 50-50. And sometimes it just depends on who's the most invested or energetic at the moment. There's some horse trading going on. There are a lot fewer kind of hissy fits than there used to be like 20 years ago when we first started working. Like somebody would always be a little annoyed at the other. Listen, with show running an entire show, there's like more than enough work to go around. So somebody's always freaking tired, and the other one can kind of pick up the ball. Somebody's always a little bit more invested, and you hope that you have time too to say, well, let's try a take this way to get what you're looking for, and we'll fight it out in the editing room, basically.
Chris was always sending me to craft services. You'd be like, there's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches over there now.
No, I tell him there's something amazing you have to try.
Distractionary techniques. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think that there's one aspect of directing or show running is that there's a lot of pressure because it's expensive. The clock is ticking, and the thing is, like, you have to almost enjoy that pressure a little bit. Like, it has to kind of like focus you as opposed to freaking you out. But I think that's why so many directors and actors behave poorly, because they don't know how to deal with the pressure. I think we did a really good job in terms of doing our best work and then also being really polite with each other. Our producing partner, Andrew, for some reason kept asking us to be less polite with each other. I think because sometimes, like, you wanted an immediate answer for something and we would kind of discuss it. There's a whole game within the game aspect of filmmaking, which I think is really great to keep an eye on, because sometimes stuff doesn't go the way you want it to creatively, and I don't know why. Like, you just don't nail it. But the time that you spend on the set is a lot of time, and so you want to kind of do a good job with that part of things, of being polite to people and creating enough room for them to be creative and feel self-confident.
Okay, very cool. I want to circle back to something, just because this is just gonna annoy the daylights out of me if I don't ask it. So I have to scratch that little mental itch. Otherwise, I'll be regretting it the rest of I'm like, I could have asked them, but anyway. Okay, so I said in the beginning I like to ask origin stories, but instead of asking the true origin story, I'll ask this: what were your earliest influences on writing, where you said, I want to be a writer because of this?
I had a great teacher, like one of these kind of really special teachers that you hope to get in life, Mr. Anderson, in 4th grade, and he made us write a story every day. So we had to come with a page-long story to class, and then you'd read it out in class. And for some people, it was total torture, but for me, I just really dug into it, and it became sort of a habit. So that was something that was really, really meaningful to me.
Okay, cool.
For me, I read a book by an uncle of mine, a grand uncle of mine, so the brother of our grandfather. And I wrote to him, and I wrote a very long, kind of wordy letter, probably hoping that that he would say what he said, which is, I kind of might have said, I'm interested in writing. Said, well, I detect some talent or something. And only later did I realize I thought he was someone else. I thought he was this like incredibly funny, sweet other granduncle, the other brother of my grandfather.
Okay.
So I don't know if I would have written him if I realized he was the kind of scowling, slightly intimidating brother, but he was very sweet in his response.
All right.
I'm going to add actually something which I always think applies to, just for extra credit. Dungeons and Dragons. Like
Oh, big
I
time.
was,
Nice.
I was a dungeon master in our group, and in some ways, I'm always just trying to recapture that sense of play and creativity that I had in making up campaigns and dungeons. I mean, that was hugely influential.
Dude, since this is, it's supposed to be quote unquote for nerds, I'm just going to go deeper on that. And because earlier today, I was thinking of, there was a character named John Pickens that we had, and Chris and I would play together. He also played with other people, and he was a fighter and kind of he was their sort of like version of a tough guy fighter. And in order to boost his levels, we would do solo adventures where we would have him go through a pre-existing dungeon and roll dice and stuff. And there was something where he was fighting nothing, like a spider. And if he rolled a 00, but out of 100, like it was 1 out of 100 chance that the spider could get him. So when I was trying to kind of like steroid him up and give him more.
Yeah, it was like auto grinding almost.
Yeah, auto grind. And anyway, he got killed by this spider. And I was like, I'm doing this solo. I don't have to tell anyone that he died. It was a big moral thing. It was first off a lesson that like anything can happen, and then secondly, it was like a big moral conundrum.
By myself, do I tell him? Do I not tell him? That's fantastic. So, do you guys still play D&D?
No, I mean, I have best intentions. I tried to get my kids into it, and they actually did. But then I realized how much work it is to be a dungeon master. Like I had forgotten.
Oh, sure.
Even if it's a module that's pre-prepared, you need to read it and like know what's going on. And it just became utterly exhausting. I was like, I do this for a living. Like I can't also DM. It's too much.
I will say, like now, when you occasionally have the opportunity to write stuff like Murderbot, where you're just pretending all over the place and building habitats and environments, it would probably be hard for me to spend like a ton of time, even as a player, just to be like, my spell of illusion is not working.
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends with Patton Oswalt, who I think still plays. I mean, he introduced me to Joe Manganiello, who's like kind of famously runs his own game and like tried to intro us and kind of set us up. And I was like, listen, man, anytime you need me, I'm there for you. And he like kind of didn't take me up on it. And then I keep on running into him at Gold's Gym. They're like, hey, Joe. And he still doesn't let me into his game.
I'm afraid your underlying question is, do we have friends?
Well, there it is.
I have, I care about a lot of people, but I don't know that I have friends in the same way that I did when I was like, doing Dungeons.
I never played D&D as a kid, just because the group of guys that I grew up with I grew up in rural West Michigan, and the guys that I played with were more interested in going out and hunting and fishing and doing all those things, and like actually
building experience, like building.
And I was like, but I've got these comic books and look at all the cool things they're doing in here. And I heard there's really cool dice game. We should try that. And they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. So
whatever.
They're lost. Yeah.
Yeah. Until a couple years ago, I actually finally got a chance to play some, and we still play on our here on our podcast once a month. We televise or air a recording of a game that we do. It's a Star Wars based. Cool. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I just had my first character get killed, so
that's a bummer. My condolences.
It was a honorable death, so I was not too broken up about it, but I still blame the GM, and we're still friends, but it's okay. All right, so speaking of growing up in Western Michigan, I do have to talk a little bit with you guys about the American Pie movies, just because American Pie, West Michigan ties. I grew up 40 minutes north of East Grand Rapids.
Oh, wow.
And so I was very familiar with East Grand Rapids, very familiar with the area in which the films were set. And as I was explaining pre-show, is a very timely coming of age story for me, because I graduated high school in 1995. The film came out in 1999. And it was very much me and all my idiot friends trying to figure out how to be adults now that we were graduated and, free moral agents. But yeah, so my biggest question here is that I look back at this movie and I always love good coming of age stories. I think that's why I really enjoyed a lot of the Christopher Columbus movies from the 80s and things like that, where there was always this great story and everything else. So was it your goal to create a coming of age story, or was your goal to create a good movie and it just happened to be a really good coming of age story?
I think it sort of went hand in hand, because the basic premise was to try to sort of humanize it, and so our underlying kind of thesis was that these kids were realizing they were going to have to say goodbye to each other and move on to other parts of their lives, and they kind of couldn't really deal with that, so they sort of sublimated it all into this idea of losing their virginity, which led them down all kinds of paths. But that the important thing was that they were growing up, or at least partly growing up. We had never. I mean, I never went to a prom. I didn't go to high school in America. I didn't really know much about it, and like I told you before we recorded, I've never been to East Grand Rapids, actually. So like this was all research based for us.
And I'm still a virgin, so it was really kind of an extension of imagination for me. So Adam Hers, who wrote the script, who we had a really fun collaboration with, did grow up where the movie's set, and it was kind of a funny, odd collaboration. Chris just told you he went to high school in England. I went to school in New York City, so like it was kind of an outside eye being put on these sort of American rites of passage. I mean, don't get me wrong, like we grew up watching the John Hughes movies and really watching Second City Television. That was the biggest sort of I think, which was just like insane characters, but the actors are so committed to believing that these people existed, and everybody had their own personal drama. So I think we were fans of Preston Sturges films, and Sturges's supporting characters down to like somebody you see in one scene, like they were all just popping off the screen. So like in a way, like the Shermanator in the movie, and we did the first movie, we kind of helped out a little with the others, but we did the first one. Shermanator, the weird insanity of Stifler, and choosing like the sweetest person that we'd ever met to play the biggest a-hole that you could ever meet. Like that was the sort of thing I think that we were bringing to it. And then, there's the big speech in the movie is not the one where Kevin is saying what they're going to do, which is to try to lose their virginity, but the one at the end where Jason Biggs says, I haven't even had sex yet, and I hate sex. It's like all the pressure put on this stuff. Yeah. The ways in which we put pressure on each other, and the ways in which friends can kind of torture each other, and beyond that, what the emotional stakes are. I think we were interested in that, but also, okay, so the scene with Finch and Stifler's mom, like Finch starts talking about the painter Piero della Francesca, which is just something that Chris came up with because he had studied art history in England. Like combine, bringing weird little moments to this sort of raunch fest was I think part of what we brought to it, as opposed to thinking, oh, this is about this or that.
Okay, that's fair. I one of the things I love about the movie, and I'm, being a fan of almost anything that's pop culture, I love the fact that this movie is so quotable. Still to this day, at least one time a week, you're going to hear me say, "Well, one time at band camp." It's going to come out. It just happens. I did it at work today. I was sitting there talking with the guys at work, and one of them said something about wanting to go do something. Like, well, that one time at band camp.
That's cool. And do people catch the reference or no?
Some people do, and some people are like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, it's American Pie, you heathen. Go watch it.
It's a 25-year-old movie now.
Exactly.
But you know that my favorite line, which is "Say my name, bitch," was Allison's ad lib, right? So I think she kind of won the movie with
That's
that
fantastic.
one. Yeah,
that's fantastic. I did not know that was an ad lib. That's fantastic. All right, so guys, one of the things that this is a question I've been asking lately in interviews. Again, it goes back to I like to know what makes people tick. So I call this the suggestion time question. And Paul, I think you'll have a fun answer for this, I'm hoping, based on one of your comments earlier. So what are you reading or listening to lately that you think everybody else should know about?
Oh, should know about? Gosh.
Obviously, they need to know about Murderbot, but.
Well, okay. There's an author named Nicola Griffith who's written 2 books. The first one's called Hild, and it's about a young girl in is it 8th or 7th century Britain, Chris?
I think it's 8th century.
8th century Britain, who, because she's very insightful, this warlord comes to believe that she can is like an oracle, basically. She can tell.
Oh, okay.
And it's got a ton of it's really sort of terrific historical fiction, but it's also, there's a fantasy aspect to it, but it's all hyper realistic too. And it's a great central character. And then the second book, called Meanwood, just came out, and I think Nicola Griffith is an amazing author who's incredibly entertaining and incredibly.
It's really beautifully written. It's kind of like a feminist Game of Thrones in some ways, although it's historical fiction as well.
Okay.
It's really, really good. I agree. Am I supposed to say one too?
If you want to, you don't have to. You can just agree with Paul and go, yeah, that's good.
Well, I made Chris read this, so he's reading it right now.
I'm reading it right now. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a clever one, so I'm going to leave it at that, I think.
Fair enough. We can live with that. All right, guys, it is time in our conversation here for a silly question. And we asked this because I have a co-host, so she's not able to be here tonight. But her and her daughter were out and about, and somebody asked this question of her daughter, but not of her. And she was like, well, that's rude. You should never age out of this question. And that question is, Chris and Paul Weitz, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Yeah. Okay. I'm very peace loving, so I think I like Diplodocus, just going around eating vegetables, too big to attack. So okay. I'm not really like a big T-Rex fan. I'm not really a big raptor fan. I feel like they've gotten way too much press.
Triceratops for me. Triceratops, because it'll bounce off the armor if you try to bite it, and then it can stab you with its horns.
I'm a big Triceratops fan, so you won with me, Paul.
Yeah.
Big fan of Triceratops. All right, very cool. All right, hey, Chris and Paul, thank you so much for being on the FSF PopCast today.
Thank you, Tim.
Where can our viewers and listeners go to find out more about you, your work, or anything you guys got coming up?
I dropped off Twitter because I got into big trouble around when Rogue One came out. So I'm just going to I'm not on social media. I'm starting. I think I'm trying to do Instagram every once in a while. So I guess Chris_Weitz at whatever Instagram ats you at. Yes, that's me.
I was never on social media because my only experience with social media was my wife telling me when somebody would say something mean about me. And I was like, I wouldn't even know. Like, don't tell me that.
All right, sometimes I lurk in the Reddit, in the Murderbot subreddit.
All right.
My favorite, one time I looked on IMDb and I Googled myself on IMDb or something. And my favorite quotes were, what a pear-shaped loser was one favorite quote. And then stop ruining books by adapting them. And I was like, stop looking up stuff about myself.
I think pear-shaped loser is very oddly specific, though, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? I mean, that must be someone who knows me.
Did it have your brother's name attached to it or somewhere?
There's no fingerprints.
No fingerprints. All right, fair enough. All right, well, I'll make sure to put some social links down there for you and encourage people to look you up on IMDb. They can see the entirety of your resume, what you've got going. And of course, guys, check out Murderbot on Apple TV Plus. Now, guys, if you haven't already, now seems like a prime time to remind you that our show continues to grow with your support. And much like crying in D&D, clicking subscribe on this show is a free action. It costs you nothing. So click like and subscribe and help us to continue to grow, get more amazing guests like Chris and Paul Weitz here to come on our show, have these great moments for you guys to be able to listen to. And make sure you guys go check out their IMDb pages as well. I am guaranteeing you they have worked on something that you were not aware that they worked on, and you'll have a more fine appreciation for what they do, even if you thought they ruined a book that you liked. So with that being said, Chris, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, thank you so much for listening and or watching, and may the force continue to be with you as you live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Copyright 2025 FSF PopCast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com.